Most people think a salary is simply a reward for work, a stable exchange where time and effort are converted into money at the end of every month. But the deeper psychological effect of monthly income is rarely discussed because salaries do much more than pay bills. They quietly shape behavior, emotional risk tolerance, long-term planning, and even personal identity. Imagine two people earning the exact same amount of money every year. One receives it in predictable monthly payments, while the other earns irregular income tied to projects or business performance. Even if both individuals earn the same total amount, their relationship with money slowly becomes completely different. The monthly salary creates a feeling of stability that can be incredibly useful for society and deeply comforting for individuals. Yet that same stability can slowly train people to prioritize short-term certainty over long-term ownership, creating habits that feel safe while quietly limiting financial flexibility over decades. The modern salary system became dominant during industrial expansion when large organizations needed predictable labor structures. Factories, railroads, and corporate systems could not function efficiently if compensation remained inconsistent or informal, so monthly wages became a tool for synchronization. Workers learned to organize their lives around the repeating financial cycle, while companies gained a stable workforce that could plan around predictable income. Over time, this structure shaped entire economies. Rent payments, utility bills, loan systems, subscription services, and even emotional spending patterns began revolving around the monthly paycheck rhythm. The calendar itself became psychologically linked to survival. At the beginning of the month, people often feel secure and optimistic, while near the end of the cycle, stress tends to increase as remaining funds shrink. This repeated emotional pattern can continue for decades without most people consciously noticing its influence. One of the most powerful psychological effects of salaries is something behavioral economists describe as mental accounting. Human beings rarely treat all money equally, even when mathematically it should be identical. Salary income often becomes categorized as safe money, expected money, or guaranteed money, while investment gains, side income, or entrepreneurial income are viewed as uncertain or temporary. This classification changes decision-making. People become more willing to commit fixed monthly expenses because the salary itself feels permanent. Car payments, apartment upgrades, subscription bundles, financing plans, and lifestyle inflation slowly expand to match the expected paycheck. Over time, the financial system adapts perfectly to this predictability because businesses understand that stable income creates stable consumers. This is why many people experience a strange phenomenon after receiving raises. Their financial stress often remains surprisingly similar even when income increases significantly. A person earning twice as much money does not automatically feel twice as financially secure because expectations expand alongside income. Larger apartments become reasonable, more expensive habits begin feeling normal, and social environments adjust upward. The salary becomes psychologically absorbed into identity rather than treated as surplus. In many cases, the monthly paycheck acts less like a tool for freedom and more like a stabilizer for an increasingly expensive lifestyle structure. There's also an important neurological component behind predictable salaries. Human brains naturally seek patterns because predictability reduces cognitive stress. When income arrives consistently, uncertainty decreases and short-term anxiety falls. This is not inherently negative. Stable income can help families survive difficult conditions and reduce emotional chaos. The problem appears when predictability becomes psychologically addictive. Over long periods, many people begin optimizing exclusively for income stability, even if it limits growth, flexibility, or ownership opportunities. The fear of disrupting monthly certainty becomes stronger than the potential benefits of long-term experimentation. This explains why some individuals remain in careers they no longer enjoy for many years, despite having valuable skills or alternative opportunities. The salary is no longer just compensation, it becomes emotional infrastructure. Mortgage obligations, recurring bills, social status, family expectations, and future planning become dependent on uninterrupted monthly cash flow. As a result, risk perception changes dramatically. Even relatively small financial uncertainty can feel psychologically threatening because the brain associates paycheck interruption with instability rather than temporary transition. The mathematics behind this system becomes clearer when viewed across decades instead of months. Imagine someone earning a stable salary and increasing spending slightly every few years as income rises. If lifestyle inflation absorbs most additional earnings, long-term wealth accumulation slows dramatically, even at relatively high incomes. A person earning a comfortable salary for 30 years may still feel financially fragile because the structure trained them to continuously recycle income back into consumption systems. The salary creates movement, but not necessarily momentum. Now, compare this to ownership-based systems. Ownership functions differently because returns are not tied directly to hours worked within a fixed cycle. Businesses, investments, equity, and productive assets can continue generating value independently of monthly labor schedules. This difference creates an important psychological divide. Salary systems reward consistency and compliance, while ownership systems often reward patience, delayed gratification, and tolerance for uncertainty. Neither system is automatically superior in every situation, but they cultivate very different behaviors over time. Historically, many wealthy families focus less on maximizing salary income and more on accumulating productive assets, because assets behave differently under compounding mathematics. A salary usually resets every month. Investments and ownership structures can accumulate. This distinction may appear simple, but psychologically it changes everything. When people rely entirely on salaries, time becomes closely connected to survival. When productive assets begin contributing meaningfully, the relationship between time and money slowly changes. This is also why economic downturns affect salaried workers so emotionally. During recessions, the fear is rarely limited to temporary income reduction alone. The deeper fear comes from disruption of the predictable cycle itself. Entire lifestyles are designed around expected monthly inflows. Once uncertainty enters that system, psychological stress can rise quickly because modern financial obligations are often rigid while income is not. Historical financial crises repeatedly show this pattern. During economic contractions, people reduce discretionary spending rapidly, not only because resources shrink, but because uncertainty increases. The brain becomes defensive when predictability disappears. Interestingly, the salary system also shapes social comparison. People frequently evaluate personal progress relative to annual compensation because salaries provide clear numerical ranking structures. Job titles, raises, and promotions become measurable indicators of worth within professional environments. Over time, this can subtly shift identity away from ownership and toward performance validation. Instead of asking whether financial systems are building independence, many people focus primarily on whether compensation levels match peers within similar social groups. The advertising industry understands this psychology extremely well. Many modern consumption systems are intentionally designed around monthly affordability rather than total cost. Products are rarely framed through lifetime financial impact. Instead, they are presented as manageable monthly payments because monthly thinking aligns naturally with salary psychology. A large purchase feels psychologically smaller when divided into predictable cycles that mirror paycheck timing. This encourages consumption expansion without requiring immediate awareness of cumulative long-term cost. There is another subtle effect that often goes unnoticed. Salaried structures can unintentionally reduce visibility into the real value of time. When income arrives automatically every month, many people stop calculating the true relationship between effort, hours, taxation, commuting, stress, and purchasing power. The paycheck becomes normalized. Yet over decades, small inefficiencies compound quietly. Time lost to unnecessary obligations, emotional burnout, and reactive spending patterns can create invisible costs larger than many people realize. Behavioral economists often discuss hedonic adaptation, the tendency for humans to quickly normalize improved conditions. Salaries interact strongly with this phenomenon because recurring income creates recurring normalization. What once felt luxurious gradually becomes ordinary. A higher salary initially creates excitement, then comfort, then expectation. Eventually, the upgraded lifestyle feels psychologically necessary, even if it was previously considered excessive. This adaptation cycle can continue indefinitely unless interrupted by conscious reflection or structural financial changes.
None of this means salaries are harmful or inherently limiting. Stable income has helped millions of families build security, education, healthcare access, and long-term stability. The important insight is simply that predictable systems shape predictable psychology. Once people recognize these patterns, they often begin making different decisions. Some become more intentional about avoiding lifestyle inflation. Others prioritize savings rates instead of status upgrades. Some begin building small ownership positions through investments or businesses while maintaining stable careers. The goal is not to reject salaries, but to understand the behavioral environment they create. The most significant financial shifts often begin with psychological awareness rather than dramatic income changes. A person who understands how monthly cycles influence behavior may become less reactive to temporary emotional spending, less dependent on external validation through compensation, and more focused on building flexibility over time. Small adjustments repeated consistently across many years can alter long-term outcomes more than sudden bursts of motivation. In many ways, the salary system reflects a broader truth about modern economics. Financial structures do not only move money, they shape attention, emotion, identity, and perception of risk. Human beings adapt to the system surrounding them, often unconsciously. The monthly paycheck is not merely a transaction. It is a behavioral framework that influences how people plan their futures, measure progress, tolerate uncertainty, and define stability itself. Understanding this does not require rejecting traditional employment or romanticizing entrepreneurship. Both paths contain trade-offs, pressures, and uncertainties. The deeper lesson is that financial systems influence psychology far more than most people realize. Once that becomes visible, individuals can begin separating emotional comfort from long-term financial strategy and make decisions with greater awareness rather than automatic habit. The people who eventually build durable financial resilience are often not the ones with the highest salaries alone, but the ones who gradually learn how to balance predictable income with intentional ownership, controlled spending, emotional discipline, and long-term thinking. That balance tends to change the role money plays in life itself, shifting it from a constant monthly pressure into a tool that supports flexibility, stability, and independent decision-making over time.